Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting Cannabis Common Sense show. We have a good show for you tonight. Standing by is the two-time winner of the Hemp Stock Online Facebook Band Award. And they're playing at our Hemp Stock Festival this weekend, Arden Park Roots. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you guys for having us. Really
Hey,
appreciate it.
thank you. And we have two great guests, Mickey Norris and Chris Conrad. Thanks for coming on. This is our 700th show, and I'm happy to have you
Real
two
honored
for
to
the
be
very
here.
first time.
Thank you, Paul.
You're going to be
Congratulations.
speaking at the Hemp Stock
We
Festival tomorrow.
certainly hope we
Yeah,
will.
you will be. I hope so too. And we have some interesting hemp news, a few show and tell articles. Maybe Casper Leach will show up, we'll see. But in the interim, we will bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Our first hemp news story tonight is national. Senator John McCain, the Republican of Arizona and past Republican presidential nominee, may be changing his stance on marijuana legalization, judging by his remarks during a town hall event in Phoenix yesterday. Senator McCain tweeted to the Arizona Daily Star columnist Tim Steller, quote, "Maybe we should legalize. We're certainly moving that way as far as marijuana is concerned. I respect the will of the people," end quote. The senator's daughter, Meghan McCain, already came out in favor of cannabis legalization and admitted she'd smoked a joint in 2012. About 10 miles from where I sit across the river from the state of Washington is legalized marijuana, also the state of Colorado. But just this past week, the Washington State Liquor Control Board said that up to 335 retail marijuana stores will be allowed in Washington State. They announced this Wednesday. And each county in the state will have its own cap on stores. King County, where Seattle is, will be allowed 61 stores, 21 of them in Seattle. Pierce County can have up to 31. Snohomish will be capped at 35, 5 of them in Everett. Thurston County will have 11, 2 each in Olympia and Lacey. Whatcom County will have 15, 6 in Bellingham. Kitsap County will be allowed 10, and Clallam County will have 6, according to Austin Jenkins and Martha Kang at KPLU, the public radio station in Seattle. Mason County will be allowed 5 stores, and Jefferson County will get 4, the Kitsap Sun reported. The entire state can produce at most 40 metric tons, or 2 million square feet, of marijuana per year, according to the Washington State Liquor Control Board in its revised proposed rules for recreational cannabis. That amount supposedly based on state research about the amount of cannabis consumed in Washington State prior to legalization, according to a story in San Francisco Gate, SF Gate. The research on state consumption of marijuana, which included an average use as 2 grams, erroneously copied data from a United Nations report and introduced a 15% across-the-board calculation error. It's been widely criticized. The rules also include 3 production tiers, less than 2,000 square feet, and 2,000 to 10,000 square feet, and 10,000 to 30,000 square feet. The maximum amount of cannabis allowed on the premises of an outdoor grow is 125% of an annual harvest, according to the Washington State Liquor Control Board. The indoor grows can have half of an annual harvest on hand, and the retailers can have a 4-month average supply as inventory. Unfortunately, no personal grows or home grows are allowed under Washington's I-502. Only commercial business grows, for which one must get a license, are allowed. The license fee, I think, is $125,000. Little guys are left out. Anything over 40 grams can still be prosecuted as a felony under I-502. It only legalized up to an ounce of cannabis. The proposed rules would require a 1,000-foot buffer between stores and schools, not as the crow flies, but in common paths of travel. Ads and labels using cartoon characters or other designs that may appeal to children are banned. The board also decided that no entity may have more than 3 licenses in each of the producer, processor, and retail categories, according to a story in the Kitsap Sun. The rules were updated not only in response to citizen feedback, but also to meet the 8 federal government enforcement priorities that the U.S. Attorney General Holder put out in a memo last week. Washington State's first marijuana retail outlets will probably open in June 2014, according to board chairperson Sharon Foster. Retailers will be allowed to stay open as late as midnight, and no internet sales will be allowed. Local moratoriums on cannabis stores may result in access issues that could end up in court, board member Chris Marr said. Hearings are planned for October 9th, and the board will adopt the rules on October 13th. License applications for the 3 types of marijuana licenses, producer, processor, and retailer, must be filed by December 18th. You can't get a license if you owe any back taxes to the state of Washington. Our next story tonight is about the National Security Administration and the Drug Enforcement Administration. The United States federal government has access to massive database containing 25 years of AT&T phone call data as part of a secret program in which telephone company employees work beside federal and local law enforcement agents to track the phone calls of suspected drug dealers. The revelations completely confirm the biggest fear of civil libertarians and drug policy reformers in the United States, that the government uses large-scale surveillance programs for drug law enforcement rather than for national security, which of course was the excuse for the wholesale warrantless spying on American citizens. As first reported by Scott Shane and Colin Moynihan of the New York Times, the operation known as the Hemisphere Project has been ongoing for at least 6 years. It has access to every single call coming through any AT&T switchboard since 1987, reports Richard Esposito at NBC News. The vast database grows by billions of calls every day and is even larger than the controversial database maintained by the National Security Administration, or NSA, which only goes back 5 years. The federal government is currently paying AT&T to embed phone company employees with DEA agents and local police drug task forces as part of the Hemisphere Project in Atlanta, Houston, Los Angeles. These phone company employees sit alongside DEA agents and local cops, supplying them with the phone data. Government officials claim that the database is maintained by AT&T and that all law enforcement access to the records is controlled by valid subpoenas. They claim the project does not involve listening to phone calls, but instead allows them to quickly connect the dots. Officials told NBC News that the database lets them establish call patterns by finding links between anonymous burner phones or prepaid cell phones and other networks and other phones. Having the AT&T employees on hand to receive the subpoenas, they claim, makes for, quote, quicker turnaround, end quote. Most of the subpoenas are administrative subpoenas, usually meaning they're issued by the DEA, how convenient, instead of by a grand jury or a judge. According to AT&T spokesman Mark Siegel, quote, "We, like all companies, must respond to valid subpoenas issued by law enforcement," end quote. One slide in a PowerPoint presentation describing the program, obtained by the New York Times from Drew Hendricks, a Washington State activist, who received the non-classified slide through a public information request, says, quote, "All requesters are instructed to never refer to Hemisphere in any official document," end quote. The PowerPoint slides have the logo of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, the czar's office, or the ONDCP, the federal agency headed by drug czar Gil Kurligowski, who recently, I believe, is retiring, and are marked, quote, "law enforcement sensitive," end quote. The slides list several instances in which spy programs help find drug suspects and drug shipments, highlighting the usefulness of the Hemisphere program in tracking phones. Are any other companies involved? Representatives refused to comment when asked if they participated in the Hemisphere or any similar U.S. government programs to spy on citizens. Stay tuned. That's the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. I'd like to introduce Arden Park Roots. Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys very much for having us. Is this on?
It's going out.
Cannabis Common Sense.
You might
thank
not
you guys
hear it
for
in
having
here,
us very
but
much.
it's going on
Totally.
TV.
We've had a good time here lately. We're playing Hemp Stock tomorrow and Alternative Wellness Center tonight. So thank you guys for having us. It's really been cool. The song's called The Music. It's coming out on our 4th record in January. We're going to tour off it pretty much the whole year, 2014. So we'll see you guys at a show. About it, I'm not upset about it. I'm trying to focus on this music and I really want it. It saved me so many times, I can't even count it. No doubt it would be shit without the music. Use it to lift you up, and when you feel it down, you feel the energy when it be in the sound. Will help you carry on, medicine to be the song. Music in evening time, play it till the break of dawn. I'm about to take this music, use it, lose it, really groove it. There's nothing wrong using song, make a life improvement. Use it to give you energy when you can feel it. Use it, use it to calm you down when you feel you're about to lose it. Music, 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 music. All about the music, 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 music. I call it how I see it. This life of record dealing, really feeling like bouncing off of the fucking ceiling. Rhythm that had you up, I know you feel it now. It's got you spinning on the floor like you're above a cloud. The rhythm does it to you, the freedom of the beat. What's the crazy thing when all you need is harmony? Total anecdotal journey to serenity. Whisper words of wisdom when you really wanna let it be. Sun emanating rays. You could be the moon, orbiting in space, and we could get through as long as you can guide me through a phase. And I will turn you up on the stereo every time you play. All about the music, 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 music. All about the music, 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 music. Rocket to the moon, a yellow submarine, the tropic island, no ship out on the rolling sea. It's got me feeling like I can't be who I wanna be. Music inside of you, living deep inside of me. Speaking the truth and views, a loose interpretation of a life that once was proven by your powers and examination, labeled by society. Yes, the life is free, amplified, provide vitality to you and me. I could be the sun, emanating rays. Dude, you could be the moon, orbiting in space. And we could get through as long as you can guide me through a phase. And I will turn you up on the stereo every time you play. It. Oh, 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 another music. You're about to lose it. Ooh, oh, 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 Thank you guys for having us. Arden Park Roots out of Sacramento, California.
Arden Park Roots. Thank you, gentlemen. That was great. I see why you won twice on the Facebook hemp stock popularity contest. Thanks.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing your set tomorrow.
Thank you guys so much. You can catch us at Alternative Wellness in on 72nd. Thank you guys.
When is that?
Tonight and always.
We're playing Alternative Wellness Center tonight, and we're playing Hemp Stock tomorrow at I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 8.
9 o'clock.
9? Cool, awesome.
So you're closing out tomorrow's show. You're closing out Saturday.
Headlining the
night.
main stage.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be here.
Thank you. And we'll have you back here in just a minute. Cool shirt, Chris. I like that
Thank
one.
you,
That's
Paul.
one of those Hawaii ones?
That's correct.
That's cool. I
And
recognize that.
55% hemp, and
Yeah.
celebrating the flower of the cannabis plant. And what a great time to be celebrating it right now before
That's
hemp
true.
stock, and in the midst of one of the most historic waves of change that we've seen in this past month.
true.
Probably more advances than we've seen in a
We've
long
been
time.
working our whole life for this, and to
Right.
finally see it start to. But let me introduce Chris Conrad, Mickey Norris. Chris, you have written many books. I know your first, Hemp Lifeline to the Future. You, before that, helped Jack Hare edit a couple editions of The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
That's correct.
You started the Business Alliance for Commerce to Hemp. I remember seeing you in 1990 on the PBS show The 90s, and you played Johnny Hempseed in a tri-corner hat. And
Johnny Marijuana Seed, but yeah, that
Jerry,
was me.
that's it, Johnny Marijuana Seed. Okay.
And it's been quite a long.
Wish we had that
road
clip
since then.
ready to roll.
Yeah. Well, it's 20 years since I wrote Hemp Lifeline to the Future, and in that book I talked about all the economic potentials of cannabis, which you've discussed on the show all the time. And we have samples right in front of us here, but it's pretty amazing that it was not until 20 years after writing the book that we finally have Congress actually voting on a hemp bill.
Yeah.
And voting to allow industrial hemp for the first time in 50 years. And I'm not sure where the outcome of that is. Last I knew, it was kind of hovering on its way towards Obama's signature, but there's a
Well,
lot
I guess it was added to the Farm Bill, and then they voted the Farm Bill down for the first time in history. I think, that
Actually, they haven't been able to vote a
farm-
farm bill up for the past
they haven't been able to
3
get much
Yeah,
out
no,
of the
they-
legislature.
yeah.
I also like to introduce Mickey Norris, who's your partner, and you started the Human Rights
and the drug war.
Human Rights, well, it was originally called Human Rights 95 because it was started in 1995 for the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. We started a photo exhibit project showing the victims of U.S. drug the
people who
US
had
drug war.
incredibly long sentences, like 10, 20, life in prison just for
yeah.
marijuana.
And this was a very comprehensive photo exhibit. It was for all drugs, and because we realized that the drug war is, although its primary target seems to be marijuana, with the most arrests for that, it's the most popular illicit drug, but we included all drugs. But it was showing the people, first-time nonviolent drug offenders who are serving long, lengthy, mandatory minimum sentences in prisons in this country. And the first time that we showed it there, people were shocked. They said, what country is this? They thought it was happening in China or in some other country, third world country, where their penalties are much harsher than what America, the land of the free, is supposed to be. And no, so we had to show them that this was happening in the United States. It's our longest war that we've had. And
Ironically, the
Yeah.
book Shattered Lies, Portraits from America's Drug War, which shows photos and tells the stories of families that have
Is
been
that a
destroyed.
book you two co-wrote?
yes,
That is correct,
Yeah.
with Virginia Resner. And
How
she
many
was-
books have you two co-written?
we just did two.
Just
That
two.
one and Human Rights in the U.S. Drug War, which frames the arguments against the drug war by looking at the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, but that was
And we
drafted by
wrote
the
it
United
with,
Nations.
We wrote it with Virginia Resner, who was working with Families Against Mandatory Minimums. And again, that book was 15 years ago. Now this year, the drug czar, not the drug czar's office, but the
Department of
Attorney
Justice.
General has said that they want to try to stop using these mandatory minimums again. So we see the scope on these things. You work on a project, you think it's going to change quickly because the cause is so righteous and it's such an important thing, but yet in fact it takes years and decades even to see the kind of change.
Generations.
And so both of these things have happened in this past year and in even the past
past
month, a
month.
couple of these things.
Yeah.
And then likewise, of course, we were talking earlier in your news presentation about what happened with the DOJ talking about setting up guidelines 8 guidelines.
Even though at the end they said we don't have to follow any of these, and we can still prosecute you
Yeah.
if you're following them all.
Yeah, it's a complete disclaimer. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, nothing you can do if we decide to go after you anyway.
But the
It
main
won't-
thing was they did not enjoin Washington and Colorado. That was something I always thought would happen, and I had heard during the election campaign through our union contacts that Obama said he would do just that if any of the states passed, that they just would sit on it.
Well,
That's what our
they
friend
completely threatened
Dan
us,
Rush told
in
us.
California with Proposition 19 in
Yeah.
2012. They came out very heavily handed. They said,
2010.
Yeah.
2019. Okay.
Time flies when you're
I know, especially when you're going backwards. No, but in 2010, when we had Proposition 19, they came in. They threatened to arrest any state official who tried to implement the provisions of the law. It was one of the things they did against our campaign, which made it very surprising that they just stood back on the 2012 campaigns, excepting for the fact that Obama himself had a voter base he couldn't afford to turn off in 2012, and he had no such a risk in 2010.
He might have lost Colorado if he'd gone
Exactly,
against,
yeah.
and maybe other states as well.
And now to have McCain.
Both
has-
of you are Californians.
That's
Long
correct.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Californians.
in the Bay Area now. We originally started working in the LA area, yeah. And that's where I worked with Jack Herer on The Emperor.
How many editions of The Emperor did you edit? And what were those number editions? It was like the third, fourth, fifth, or somewhere in that seventh?
You know, I don't know how he numbered them because he had several versions. It was earlier. It was called actually the OMI CMI white papers, where it said that it was everything you ever wanted to know about marijuana, but were afraid to ask, or The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Then the version I did was called Hemp and the Marijuana Conspiracy, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And so that was in 1990. And I did that up until 94, I think, was the last one I worked on, 93 or 94. Then Ellen Comp became the editor of the first.
Ellen Comp did.
But of course, the main
Remember, the
change was in
first
1990.
editions were here in Portland. The very
That's
first
correct,
edition
yeah.
was written back in my house in 1985.
Hence it was called the OMI
and
white
that's-
paper.
I'm in the first acknowledgement. I'm also in the acknowledgement of your book, Hemp Lifeline: The Future.
Yeah,
for that
you were the
last
one
chapter.
who provided all the
I found
presidential
that last
information.
chapter information here at Portland State University in their library,
Yeah.
the font of wisdom.
So quite a lot of history. In fact, Casper, whose seat I'm sitting in right now, was instrumental in some of that stuff down in LA with us too. He worked with us a long time.
I know. And I'd like to say that Casper Leach is here. Welcome, Casper. You're going to jump in a little
Okay.
closer? Okay.
You
Have
never
you got a
say his name, I
microphone?
guess.
Get a microphone.
Yeah,
Use that one.
right there.
Well, hello and happy Friday. How you doing? Oh my God, so good to
And
see
we haven't
you.
seen Casper, of
And
course,
thank you,
since
Paul.
Hey.
the Hemp Fest.
Yeah, sorry to come in late, but you know when you're a hemp activist, sometimes you're busy hemp activating.
Today has been a very busy day for us. I just got to say a couple things about that. I hold in my hand right here 3 different letters from the Oregon Secretary of State that we received today at 4:45 p.m. in the afternoon that say we can circulate our 2 marijuana initiatives and our natural rights initiative that says people have more rights than government. So we just barely, under the wire, were able to get this approved in time for volunteer petitioning tomorrow at the Hempstock Festival. If you'd like to come down to the Hempstock Festival, we will be down at the waterfront tomorrow and Sunday at Kelly Point Park. You can find out more at hempstock.org. Here is the city paid $14,000 permit that allows us to be down there.
And I wouldn't miss it for the world. I really suggest everybody should be out there. This is like probably one of the most historic periods that you even get involved with something like now. We were at the stage with Casper and you in the early 90s where we were like pushing the big rock up the hill. And at this point, you know, the rock is rolling. And
Finally, down the hill and away.
we hope, yeah.
And to full freedom. I
Well,
certainly
gotta
hope
say,
so
the
too.
Seattle Hemp Fest, just by happen chance, when the police officer who handed out the Doritos was giving a speech about how they were going to work with the states and work with implementing it, Chris and I were standing right side by side watching it at that moment. We were both almost in tears because we remember working in Jack's office together and Chris coming in as my mentor.
Did you get a bag?
Yeah, I did.
All right.
And- but
I got
gave
one
it-
too.
I gave it
Someone
to
brought me
Mickey.
one.
I gave my bag to Mickey. And I remember he coming in. He even told me that normal was not Normal, Casper. It was,
There's no
and
way, you know.
he was my mentor, and to have him standing alongside me at the moment I heard a police officer sitting, police chief, say those words at the Seattle Hemp Fest, it was really remarkable. So
It was quite impressive. I
was.
felt in the just the difference. It was the first hemp fest that since legalization up there, and the police actually got on the stand and they said, you're not allowed to smoke in public, but we're going to let you go at this event. And I was on a group in between some bands. They had me with 3 other speakers, and one of them was the city attorney of Seattle, saying that he was in favor of the bill and they were supporting it, and they were ready to have the shops open to sell marijuana to the adults. The second was a senator from Alaska, Mike Gravel, yeah. And then it was me, and then the next speaker was the police liaison speaking again on the stage and saying that their policy in Washington is going to be leniency until they get everything else in effect up there. And I was thinking, we used to have these protests in front of the federal buildings to be like, me and 3 hippies, and now all of a sudden it's me and a city attorney and a police chief and a senator saying those things.
Exactly. So we were talking about how he had shown up with all these flyers, and it was actually him. I think maybe you might have came to one of them, and 2 other people.
We were younger and crazier in those days.
Our hair was a little darker too.
Yeah, our hair is getting a little whiter, or going away in some cases.
And Paul, you're a big aspect of that. Not only are you a big contributor to the Seattle Hemp Fest, you make the Portland hemp stock happen, and because of you, you've upgraded the hemp festival.
And this TV show. This TV show, this is our 700th show. So we've been here in this community. We won Measure 47 by 61% in Multnomah County and 63% here in Portland and 3 other counties. And recent polls done by other organizations show in May that 63% of likely Oregon registered voters will vote in favor of legalizing marijuana now. So there's been this huge shift since the election last November in the electorate.
And while we're on a love fest about you, Paul, I would say that Mickey and I have been the publishers of the West Coast Leaf for 5 years, and it was really important to us that as a regular thing, THCF was an ad we could count on being there to help us pay those bills and get that paper out. So you played an important role in that as well.
Proud to support
Well,
you guys.
I know that you're also
Casper.
a big supporter of the Steve Bloom's work on Celeb Stoner. You also are a big supporter of
What's that show on American Freedom Radio?
Time for Hemp.
Oh, that's right.
And Steve Elliott, you've kept him floating, and you've kept the message going out there for.
And
who's the old guy with the
I really have to say,
you know?
thank you to the patients who come in our clinic, because it's really the patients who are the ones that are helping us do that. Without their support and them coming in to see our doctors, we wouldn't have that. And so I just want to say thank you to the patients for helping us change the world. But I get to be a catalyst in there and move toward that. Now, we have several phone calls, so let's go ahead and roll through them real quick. Welcome to the show, caller. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you for taking my call. I have great interest in industrial use of hemp. This gentleman, Johnny Appleseed over there, said to me about it. And, now that it's more legalized, does it open the door for production of hemp fuel?
I believe so. Why don't you answer
All
that?
the states that legalized, both of the states that legalized included an angle in which you can get hemp grown. There's also, I believe, 14 other states that have passed specific hemp bills. The problem
The state of Kentucky, their Commissioner of Agriculture just this week said that the Department of Justice's memo saying they aren't going to prosecute Washington, Colorado means that they can implement their hemp law for the first time.
And may I jump in? We had Senator Perry Clark from Kentucky on this morning on as a guest on the show.
Oh.
And he's going to have that gentleman on as a guest on Time for Hemp in another week or two to discuss just that.
Great.
And they believe that in Kentucky they will be having huge farms of industrial hemp going into seed.
Really?
And they really anticipate it. And I said, what about the DEA and the FBI? He said, what about them? This is what we're doing in Kentucky.
Well,
All right.
plus, it's my understanding that in Colorado there is some activity going on right now.
Yeah, there's a 60-acre site.
Right, and
So there'll be a lot of things happening in Oregon in the next year as well.
And one of the keys
we have
to
an
that
hemp bill here, and go ahead.
is that the federal government has a death penalty for marijuana, which is about 1/4 of an acre of industrial hemp. So if somebody's
Right.
growing 60 acres.
But if you're in compliance with the state law, I currently have a garden, and just with my garden, if I was prosecuted because I have prior marijuana felony arrests, I would face life without the possibility of parole. Sends a cold shiver down my spine every now and then, but I'm over it now.
Well, yeah, I
But-
was going to say, Paul, this morning I saw on the news there was like 60 arrests here in Portland, Oregon over like the last 12
Well, I am in
15 grow houses,
complete and full compliance with the law, but I'm very hopeful with Oregon's newly passed and soon to be enacted
what's
dispensary
going on
law, I can expand my garden.
What's going on with all these raids, though?
Bring down the cost of Rick Simpson
They had
oil
like
or
60
Phoenix
raids
Tears.
here in Portland in the last 24 hours.
I don't know.
It was pretty.
Oh
crazy.
yeah, there was someone in Hillsborough. They said was shipping cannabis out of state.
Well,
that was it.
Yeah, that's they're claiming
Yeah,
right
so
now
that's
that it's being
what
shipped
they're-
out of state. But of course, my
Some of these
experience.
U.S. attorneys are still out of control. In California, in the Northern District, we have Melinda Haig, who's vowed to continue the policy which she's been doing, and she's still going after Harborside Health Center, which is the biggest medical marijuana
You know,
dispensary in
the
the
Harborside's
country.
had the IRS come after them. Well, I can tell you, I've been under a constant state of audit for 10 years, and I'm always dealing with the IRS. They really thought because of my garden that somehow they could show I had income for it, but I just give it all away for free.
Well, and it's so sweet.
It's
because,
fun.
Seriously, when
It's
they
a
get
whole
together-
new paradigm,
when-
folks,
when they get
and I
together
enjoy
with
it.
The IRS, Teresa makes the little brownies and makes the little cookies and always tells the IRS agent they're medicated. Be careful, but have a couple if you want. So it's like a family affair anymore.
But the
Okay.
hemp issue is extremely important. I'm really glad that caller brought that up.
All right, yeah, thank you, caller. Let's see if we can get another caller in here. Welcome to the show, caller. Oh, they're gone. Okay, let's try another line. Oh, they're gone. That's okay. You know what? We have a little film clip that we're going to run at the very, what was it? It will be 4 years ago now. This is from the 2009 hemp stock. Enjoy this film clip.
A trailblazer, a pioneer. He's the author of the book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Really, if you think about it, he's one of the founding fathers of the modern cannabis re-legalization movement. And I want you to put your hands together and show your love. You coming around this way? For the one and only Jack Harrer, everybody. Jack Harrer.
Some of these people know me from 1984. I came up here to Oregon and Washington. We did an initiative over and over and over and over and over again. We bought a store, we put on the store over and over and over again, and we put on the ballot, and we bought 98, we passed the initiative. We went out and got the fucking signatures, and we passed the initiative. Now I will tell you, we told that with once a little bit of rain will fall, but it's okay because we got it for medicine. In a year before that, we bought it for medicine in California, in Dennis Perone and me went down there and got 750,000 signatures, and we passed it on the ballot for medicine, and we got it all over the fucking state except for red areas like San Diego. 14 years after we passed the law, it's still going on. I'm going to tell you, there's nothing fucking better for the human race than having marijuana morning, noon, and night. You have 2 years longer than people that don't smoke and don't drink, and 8 to 24 years longer than people that do. You gotta be out of your mind not to smoke dope. from 1 to 100 before you get to soybeans. 1 to 100. The first, second, third, 50th, 90th, 100 chains of everything on earth. And the number one chain to 100 is hemp seed, and that's against the law. We didn't know it in public school, high school, or college. I didn't know that 98% of all the food and clothing on the whole world was hemp. And it's the best thing the world has ever had. I don't want to fucking raise the United States government $1 fucking of taxes. I thought they could go to fucking jail for getting you and me and 20 million people getting arrested for pot. It's the safest thing you can do in the universe. And that is what we're going to do in California. Okay? Come over to my booth. I'm over there. And I will see you next time.
Let's give it up for Jack Herrera.
Well, that was Jack's very last speech. I know you two were there back in '09, 4 years ago, when within 5 minutes of this, he had a massive stroke and heart attack. And he hung on after that. He was life-flighted out of the park after about 20 minutes to a nearby hospital, but he passed away, quite ironically, given the content of his speech, on April 15th, tax day here in the United States. And so he doesn't want, I like that he made the distinction that he didn't want to give the federal government any money.
Yeah,
that
right.
was that was a nice distinction.
And about 10 minutes before Gatewood Galbraith and Lynette Shaw and I went on air on that day, we got the news of Jack passing, and we did a live broadcast.
He didn't pass that day.
On the 15th.
Oh, on
the day.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
On the day that Jack passed
Jack's
away.
day.
Okay.
And we had to do our show live after getting the news just 15 minutes before going on air. And Gatewood and I and Lynette were completely blown away and really had to keep it together for an hour and pay tribute to our buddy and friend.
It was quite a shocker to have him fall there right at the tree by... In fact, we are now moving the city of Portland. We have to wait till 3 years after he had passed away, which came last April 15th. We're moving the city of Portland to change the name of Kelly Point Park to the Jack Herrera Point Park. And we've named our stage the Jack Herrera Memorial Stage, because since he gave his last speech there.
And we thought we'd have the statue made out of Hemp Creek. Make a statue of Jack Herrera, make it out of Hemp Creek.
Or at least a bench.
Bench out of Hemp Creek. Yeah, I was actually the speaker after Jack, and so I passed him going up. He was coming down, I was going up, and I thought he went over and sat down by a tree. And then I got on the stage, and I was giving my remarks, and then somebody came up and they interrupted me and said, "Everybody pray for Jack, you know what I mean?" And it's like, I had no idea what she meant. But
and isn't that ironic? I remember days of you coming into the office mad at Jack because he almost got you fired for leaving joints around.
Yeah, when he came to where I was working. Yeah, that was a different newspaper, one I didn't own. And,
it helps when you own the newspaper.
I mean,
Freedom Press belongs to those who own one.
You've come a long way with Jack.
Yeah, I went through an awful lot with Jack, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, the thing with me though, that with
and
Jack,
we all had our. He was from the time I first met him, I was 21 when I first met Jack in L.A. in 1982, and he. I've always described him as bombastic, especially before he had that stroke.
Right.
He had come back pretty well there. It took him years to regain a lot of his speech. He had a stroke about 10 years before he passed.
Well, the one thing I never got used to, he did it the very second day I worked for him, was anytime you're eating around him, he did without any hesitation would walk up and reach onto your plate and take half of your food with his hands and just start eating like we came out of the same womb together. This is natural. It's like, excuse me.
And we have some callers standing by. Let's go ahead and take a couple calls. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hi. This is Go Long Dave. Paul, how you doing?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I came in a little bit late. I heard you say it's $125,000 for the retail license in Washington.
Yeah, that's the what they're charging for each of the licenses, I think.
Okay, that was my question. Is it $125,000 to be a grower, to be a processor, and to be a retail outlet?
I understand it. I'm not well enough versed to guarantee that, but that's what my current
But there should be some
understanding.
distinction if you've got 3 different sizes of grows. I
There
mean, I
should
can't
be.
imagine it would all be the same price, because otherwise.
Maybe that's the smallest
not for a
one.
dispensing
I think it's
license?
for each of the 3 different licenses.
Oh.
I think, but don't quote me on that, even though I'm on TV. We'll
Where
have
would
it
we
more
find that out? Is there an application?
Sure. The Washington State Liquor Control Board. Go to their website, Washington State Liquor Control Board, or go to Google, and ask, or any of those other search engines out there. Bing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Corporate entities.
I live in a free country, and I got 57 licenses to prove it. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I spend so much time on government malarkey, but sometimes it's good. We got petition. We got our $13,000 some odd dollar permit.
Yeah, and California is still working its way. We're looking more or less towards the 2016 ballot. I mean, there's some efforts to get on 2014, but we're thinking that we have a really good chance in 2016, and we may have some legislative changes that happen in 2014. So, hopefully we'll be either voting with you guys or within a couple of years of you guys, or else the legislature just changed the law, which would be perfectly fine with me if they do that. Well, our problem in California, ironically.
Well, we're hopeful the legislature will do that as well. We're circulating these marijuana initiatives. We have a statutory one. We will withdraw that if the legislature decides to refer an initiative. We will defer to the legislature. That's what they're supposed to do. And if we don't like it, then we'll change it later.
It's somewhat ironic that Jerry Brown, the governor of California today, was also governor in 1976 when decrim happened there. And so a lot of people credit him for the decrim, which was, of course, actually written by George Moscone.
He was assassinated, wasn't he?
Yes,
by
and then replaced by Dianne Feinstein, which got her into place to become like one of the worst senators in the history of the United States. As far as I'm concerned, she's a terrible representative, but that was how she got her foot in the door. But nonetheless, my point was that a lot of people credit him with that, and yet the reason last year the California legislature voted to set up a taxed and regulated adult access for non-medical marijuana and to create to set up a hemp bill and also to make a medical marijuana dispensary bill, I believe. All those passed the legislature last year, and they were all vetoed by the governor because he said he was afraid of what the federal government would do. And so, it's just ironic that he's the one who signed the decrim bill, and then he's vetoing all these legalization bills because he's afraid of the federal government. Now the federal government comes out and says that may not be the kind of problem that he had said it will be. So we're really optimistic that the change can be done by the legislature. Although the bad thing about the legislature is it goes in one way, it doesn't look anything like it when it comes out, and that's the advantage of an initiative.
Isn't that the old saying, you don't want to see 2 things made, sausage or laws? Who was it that said that?
I think Bismarck or something.
Maybe Upton Sinclair or something like that. I don't know. There is our hemp flame of freedom. This is the reason that marijuana is illegal. It's because of hemp fuel and hemp fiber. And so every week we like to point out that, hemp can be used to make plastic that's cheaper and cleaner today. And when we remove the artificial restrictions on the hemp use of higher THC, higher seed producing species of cannabis, then hemp will be restored to its rightful place in our economy, and we'll be allowed to have hemp fuels, hemp plastics, hemp fiber, hemp foods, and various other hempen items. I love the way you opened your book, Hemp Lifeline to the Future, about how we can all have hemp towels and clothes and drive our cars on hemp.
Well, what was cool was when I first met, he had this little hemp kit that showed the string and the paper and the fuels and how the seed and how that way he talked about the history and how it all evolved and so he had the Businessman's Alliance for Commerce and Hemp.
You also were the curator of the Hemp and Cannabis Museum, or Cannabis and Hemp Museum in Amsterdam for a while.
Marijuana and Hemp Museum.
That's it, the hash marijuana and hemp.
And also the Amsterdam Cannabis Museum now. So got a lot of things going in there.
And Richard Davis is
Which one are you now?
No, actually, Richard Davis's museum is something that needs to be discussed at some point. But he's got his own museum.
I understand that today he's taken so ill that he might not come back.
Oh no!
So
something
I hope
happened
that's
to him
not
today.
true.
Well, it's no.
He's been doing badly lately.
I'd also like to mention that we lost Jean
Richard.
Marlowe.
Yes,
Jean
thank
had
you.
moved here
Thank
for 3 months to live in our outdoor garden house, but her health deteriorated. She was here. We got her legal in Oregon, Washington, California licenses, and with the reciprocity in a total of 7 states.
We
But
met Jane back in 1997 when she was in Switzerland looking to Europe to get a license.
and she'd already
a
spent time in
prescription from a
prison
doctor.
for being shipped some Swiss cannabis.
And she also she used some information I put in Hemp Lifeline to the Future to beat a court case one time
Yeah.
too. I think Mickey might. I'm not sure which book it was,
But I just
but
wanted
Mickey
to-
should maybe mention something about the Cannabis Consumers Campaign as well, because I think that's another.
Please do. Mention something about the Cannabis Consumers Campaign.
Being the director of the Cannabis Consumers Campaign.
Okay. Well, everybody should.
I'm a consumer.
As the director of the Cannabis Consumers Campaign, I'm asking all of you to please come out of the cannabis closet and to stand up for your equal rights. What we need to do is collectively and individually start coming out to show people that we are the good people, which we are. Most of the cannabis consumers I know are some of the most intelligent, creative, nicest, decent, honest people that I know, and it's ridiculous that we're criminalized and treated like second-class citizens in our own country. So what I did, as a response actually to our Human Rights and the Drug War exhibit, where I got really sick and tired of the victimization that good people are subjected to with these drug laws the way that they are, I felt the best way to start dispelling that and to really break down the prohibition was to come out of the closet, and with cannabisconsumers.org, my website, I've been collecting surveys and photos and of people who are cannabis consumers to show that we are doers and achievers.
I'm one of the few people who
successful
was
people.
never in the closet. I, from the age of, way too young, have been very much out of the closet. I was never went in there, except to smoke a joint.
And let me just say from experience.
When I didn't have much.
Let me just say from experience, girlfriend closets are for clothes, not for living.
We have another phone caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Now, first and foremost, I want to say you guys do an amazing job, and thank you for everything that you guys do.
We're glad to do it.
Now I got a question. I need some help. So I'm a first-time medical grower, and I currently have an outdoor garden in high elevation, and the nighttime temperatures are dropping sub 40 degrees. They were hardened off early in veg. They made it through 28-degree nights, but now it's
How high is your
middle
elevation?
of flower, about 4,000 feet.
I see. You know, cannabis grows in the high Himalayas at 12,000 feet, where trees won't grow. In Kashmir and Nepal and Afghanistan, they won't get quite as big without the warm roots. And if you warm the roots, as long as it doesn't go below about 30, I think you'll be okay.
Okay, definitely, yeah. 'cause
Gets
I've been
lots
trying
of
to take all
ultraviolet
the
light.
necessary-
That's one of the best things about high elevation. That ultraviolet light makes the resin glands swell.
Yeah, getting the right strain is going to be also very important.
That's
in
true.
this,
Very
you know,
short season that'll end early would be a good thing, like the Alaskan strains and those kind of things. Would
But
be
I will
perfect.
expect to hear a lot more when they get going in Colorado better, because they're going to be doing some mountain growing there.
Yeah.
So
They have been doing that.
Exactly.
Very good question, though. Thanks for your call.
You mean
Well,
the herbs like by Colombian coffee,
I guess
mountain
so.
grown.
Let me just real quickly go through our show and tell. Let's get camera 2 on. This is a new book out. It's The Latest and Greatest from Robert Connell Clark along with Mark Merlin. Connell Clark is a cannabis researcher and wrote Marijuana Botany and Hashish. And Mark Merlin is a botany professor at the University of Hawaii at Manoa who wrote On the Trail of Ancient Opium and Kava, the Pacific Drug. So
cover.
this is a new, in-depth, state-of-the-art book. I highly recommend it.
Highly?
Highly.
Highly.
Right here from Mark, we have chlorodyne syrup. This include. Can you close in on that? Maybe get in real close. It has cannabis, morphine, chloroform, other things. This oil of peppermint. This will knock you out. But you see, it's still got a little bit of 120-year-old residue. And speaking of residue, right here we have another neat one that is a lot like that. It's a cough cure. And it too has cannabis and chloroform and morphine, and it's for coughs, colds, loss of voice, bronchitis, and to knock you out. This is about 125 years old, and it's full. It's kind of neat. This is from a deceased, no, it's not full. I'm wrong. It's from a deceased DEA agent. We have our hemp fiber. We'll go over here. Hemp fiber. And that makes more paper than trees, canvas, rope, lace, and linen from the bathroom. Then we have our hemp flame of freedom, 100% hemp oil burning here. This is the reason marijuana is illegal, to stop hemp fiber and fuel and make us use the dirty petrochemical other alternatives that they force us to use. Now we have this Austrian hemp beverage, Chillo, and we have these hemp seeds from Johnny Hemp Seed. I got you. You're Johnny Marijuana Seed. This guy's Johnny Hemp Seed. He's got toasted ones. They got chocolate ones. They're raw. They're shelled. Hemp. It's so many different things.
Hemp, right.
We just took a walk before the show and stopped into just a store in Hawthorne that and put on some really nice hemp seed lotion. It was beautiful.
You can get it in any body care store now. And of course, Anita Roderick at her Body Shops pioneered that and then helped produce that movie about Jack Harrer.
That great ad campaign she did as well.
They've got a neat store in Boulder still with marijuana all over the walls. And if you ever get down to the 16th Street Mall in Boulder, this time you're there.
No, but we're going to be
Check
going
that out.
to Denver this October for the International Drug Policy Reform Conference. That's going to be held there the 24th to the 26th of October, and should be a fantastic conference. I'd really recommend for people to check that out at reformconference.org, because it's going to be a good one. We're going to be discussing legalization. We're going to be discussing all the various aspects of drug policy reform, which includes harm reduction for other drugs as well. But it's a very comprehensive international conference, and
the
top experts
will be
and
very big on the
researchers.
agenda.
Oh yeah, and Uruguay
All right.
is on the
I don't know if I
verge
can
of
squeeze that one in
legalizing
my
as
schedule.
well.
Got a lot of travels
May
coming.
I jump in? You know Mike Bafari?
Of course.
He's going to, it looks like he's going to arrange to have the drug czar from Uruguay be a guest on what?
Time for hemp.
That was cool, you guys.
Terrific, yeah.
You know, we're down to just a few minutes left. I'd like you guys to give a plug for your websites and, of course, anything else you want to plug. You've got a minute.
Well, what I would say is marijuana is not completely legal, which is most places right now. A lot of people end up in court, and I work as a marijuana expert witness in the courts. I've qualified more than 200.
You're probably the most busy marijuana expert in the country, if not the world.
As far as I know, that's correct. And so hopefully you don't have any legal problems, but if you do, come to chrisconrad.com and go to westcoastleaf.com.
I've testified in a few hundred myself. Mickey?
Oh, go to cannabisconsumers.org and come out of the closet or garage in that case. And also I'll put another plug in for reformconference.org, because I think it's going to be really important for people to come out for that conference and see what's going
Where
on.
can
and
people
how they
find
can
out
get
about that?
involved. Reformconference.org.
All right.
Okay, thank you, DHCF, and thank you.
Casper, you want to?
Time for Hemp. Go to timeforhemp.com. We broadcast live every Monday through Friday, and we're also on iHeartRadio.
So you just got on iHeartRadio this week, right?
3 days
Congratulations.
ago. Thank you. And millions of people can now find us, and we want to say thank you very much. And of course, we want to see you at the Portland Hemp Stock. Chris is speaking, Mickey's speaking, Paul's speaking, and of course, you can't shut me up unless you give me a joint. Then I'll be smoking in between speaking.
We'll have the Hemp Hut there from Vote Hemp. We'll have John Trudell and Bad Dog playing their 9th hemp stock. We'll be closing out with Los Marijuanos. Real One will be playing, Arden Park Roots, who opened our show, and more, and many other speakers as well. And we like to thank our sponsors, Greenleaf Labs and Paul Loney Law Firm, of course, and THCF Medical Clinics often makes all this possible. But you can find out more about us at that website or hemp.org. Tune in next week and help us
Restore Hemp. And here's Los Marijuanos, Pony Boy.
Yo. Hello, what up, though? How's everybody doing?
Yeah.
9 year hemp star players. Mr. Ed King, my special guest.
Nice.
We're ready, man. Turn up the music for us.
Yeah, we're rocking out. Pony Boy's great, baby.
Come check us out at Hemp Star. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They call it dabbing, my nugget.
We're dabbing. It's time for dabbing. It's time for dabbing. We're dabbing. It's time for dabbing.
We dabbing.
It's time for dabbing.
We need them in dawn. Dabs, pops, elaborate bombs. Like cannons we're drawn. And pass it on down.
That's right.
Get from the cows, spray in the dish. Stick with the flow, it's in the stroke. Just picking your nose.
Picking your nose.
Cali green, I'm loving it still. Stuff for the drill. Always get love when up in the hills. Yeah, we getting it hot. I'm lifted a lot.
That's right.
Sure hitting the spot. No, take my heart and give it a shot.
We dabbing. Looks like we're dabbing. Looks like we're dabbing. We're dabbing.
Whack.
Oh yeah.
It's time to dab.
It's time for dab. That's right. It's dab.
More. Just grabbing some more.
Score.
Those marijuanos and start forevermore. I'm the oil man.
Oil man.
The oil man.
Oil can.
Spreading our safety all across the land. Each and every hot,
Hot, hot.
George steady.
Steady, steady, steady.
Ready,
Ready, ready, ready,
I'm
ready.
not coming. I
Still win.
Take a hit, showing up from my basement.
We're dabbing. It's time for dab.
It's time to dab. It's time to dab.
It's time for dab.
I said we're dabbing. It's time to dab. Yeah. We're dabbing. We're dabbing. We're dabbing. We're dabbing.
It's time for dab.
Yeah, yeah.